Perfect. Okay, over to you, Lauren.
Thank you. Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending this newly diagnosed webinar, which is focused on physical activity. My name is Lauren, and I will be your host this evening. That might delight you, it might not. Unfortunately, you don't get a choice. There's not enough budget to get a famous person, so you stuck with me. I do work for Parkinson's UK, and I'm the Physical Activity Engagement Officer. And the main part of my role focuses on enabling activity providers to deliver high quality physical activity provisions to people with Parkinson's. For tonight, my colleague Brooke is on hand. She hasn't got a camera on, but she's there as tech support. So if you've got any issues with anything technology, please direct your question to Brooke. And we're also joined by three wonderful panelist members. We've got John, Maria, and Paul, who will be providing lots of useful information and insight today. I'm now going to invite each panel member to introduce themselves, starting with Maria.
Hello. Thank you so much for inviting me this evening. So my name is Maria Lewis. I am a physiotherapist and I specialise in working with people with Parkinson's. I'm also co-founder of Reachable Peak, which is an online exercise community for people with Parkinson's in the UK. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. And Paul?
Hi, good evening. I'll mirror what Maria says. Thanks very much for the invite. My name is Paul, and I was diagnosed with Parkinson's 5 years ago. So I'm very keen to hear the experiences and give some good advice as well.
Thank you, Paul. And John?
Hi, my name's John. Again, thanks for the invite. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's just over 11 years ago. And I too am still trying to learn what are the best exercises to do. So I'm hoping to learn a lot today.
Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. And thank you to everyone who's in the audience today who have already submitted questions pre-meeting today. We've reviewed all of the questions that were submitted and highlighted a number of these questions and topics that we're going to cover during today's session. Once we've covered those, any questions that you might come up during the session, we can then respond to with any remaining time. If you do have a question that comes to mind, please pop it in the chat box function during the session. And if we're unable to get round to all of those because our discussions are so amazing, what will happen is there will be a follow-up to the session and we'll put some of the FAQs in there with responses so you still get all that really important, vital information. Please be aware that unfortunately we're only going to be able to discuss general queries and we're unable to answer any personal individual questions. So it might be location specific, that might be about a specific support need you or someone you know has. We won't be able to answer those very specific questions. However, what we would encourage you to do is to discuss these with a Parkinson's nurse, GP, neurophysio, anyone in your health team and your support team. Please ask those questions to those people that know you really well and can give you that really personalized advice. So without any further ado, we're going to begin. So, research shows that regular physical activity has a positive impact on the health and well-being of people with Parkinson's. But regardless of your activity levels before you're diagnosed, it can be challenging and sometimes really overwhelming to consider how we put these exercise recommendations into practice. You know, how do you fit it all in? In the last physical activity session on the newly diagnosed webinars, the panelists discussed in depth about what the exercise recommendations are and what the evidence is behind these and supporting these. Today, we're going to focus a little bit more on the how, like how can you make sure that you fit these recommendations into your day? How do you best support yourself to live an active lifestyle? So if you want to know lots and lots and lots about those physical activity recommendations, you can still access the first recording. It's there for you to access at any time you like on demand. So please do check that out if that's of interest. But don't worry if you don't know any of the recommendations. To begin with, I'm going to ask Maria to just give us a little reminder and a brief explanation of what the physical activity recommendations are for people with Parkinson's. So Maria, can you let us know, please?
Yes, thanks, Lauren. So yes, I mean, the first thing I'm going to say is just that they are recommendations, they are guidelines. So, and they're quite large, as Lauren has adhered to already. There's quite a bit in there. So just don't get afraid by that, first of all, the first thing. So the current published recommendations suggest that you should be doing aerobic intensity is really, really important when we're exercising for Parkinson's. And we'll talk a little bit more about why and how that is the case in a little while. But the current recommendations suggest that you should be doing up to 150 minutes of aerobic exercise a week. And that can be starting at a moderate level of intensity and working towards a more vigorous level. So when we talk about levels of intensity, we're talking about how hard you're working and getting hot and getting sweaty. So you need to be working at a level where you're starting to feel a bit warm for that moderate level, and you can feel your heart starting to beat in your chest. But as you push that level a little bit harder towards that vigorous intensity, you might find that you're starting to sweat a bit more. You really are struggling to speak in a full sentence as you work. So that's where you're working towards if we're looking for that aerobic intensity. And as I said, I'll touch a little bit on why that's so important in a little while. On top of that, we've also looked at strength training, because strength is really another key factor to your exercise prescription. What the recommendations, the guidelines tell us is that you should be working 2 to 3 times a week on your strength on non-consecutive days. And for at least 30 minutes per session, and you use 10 to 15 reps of your major muscle groups using resistance, speed and power as a focus. So that's the strength element. Then we need to look at balance, agility, and multitasking. These are really important factors as part of your exercise prescription, because balance, we know really from an early from diagnosis, really, we see that balance can be affected, and certainly at the latter stages, what we want is to prevent anybody from falling. So balance is really key. So again, the recommendations, the guidelines suggest that you should be working 2 to 3 days a week on that, but really daily integration when we look at balance work is the way forward and really key. And then finally, it's stretch and mobility. And I think this is just a really, really key part of the exercise prescription, because we're asking you to work so hard from aerobic intensity, so you need to look after those muscles and make sure you stretch well, but also because rigidity, stiffness, change of posture is a real problem in Parkinson's. So stretching, and again, it's 2 to 3 times a week, days a week, but again, daily integration. The people we work with, we do suggest that they have a bit of an stretch routine that they kind of fit into their life, and it's just something that they do every day. So yeah, as you said, Lauren, there's an awful lot within that whole guidelines recommendation. So maybe we can pick that out a bit more in a minute.
That's great. Thank you, Maria. And like we said, it does sound huge. And even from a perspective of someone like myself, who's quite a young adult, I would say I'm relatively active. Would I say I'm meeting all of those elements in my physical activity that I choose to do? I'm probably not. The general adult recommendation for any adult is around 150 minutes of activity anyway. So when you think about the general population, actually, it can be quite a big jump. And especially being delivered on your plate as this big pile, it's very, very easy to feel overwhelmed about this. And this is what we want to try and support you all with today. It's just knowing that, you can get there. There are choices and opportunities you can take and ways of going about this to make sure that you can create the active lifestyle that supports you and what you need and around your lifestyle. John, I'm going to come to you. I just wondered, when you were first diagnosed, how did you feel about the exercise recommendations? Like, how did that seem to you?
Well, it's one of those things. When I was first diagnosed, there was no recommendation for exercise. To be honest, it was just kind of like, oh, you got Parkinson's. Fortunately, and unfortunately for them, I had two friends who also had Parkinson's, and their advice to me was do exercise, do as much of it as you can, do it as hard as you can. I swam, went to the gym, ran, that sort of thing. So it wasn't a huge change. It was more, I just had to make sure I was doing things that I specifically wanted. So I had gone to the gym, but I didn't tend to do weights. But so I suddenly had to start doing weights and so forth. I found that using things like resistance bands was easier for me than weights because I could have them around the place. I can have them around the house. I don't want to be tripping over dumbbells and things like this the whole time, which was quite good. As time's gone on, I have found other exercises that I like to do. And what you've got to do is not be shy. Don't feel I can't go into a gym. I went into a boxing gym for the first time ever. Never boxed in my life. I had no idea. All I saw was Rocky. And these guys were a delight. They were absolutely lovely and helpful. Local rugby team playing walking rugby. So I said, I've got Parkinson's. You okay with that? And they went, yep. We've got lots of people who have got lots of things. So if you enjoy it, great. So if you're shy, then you won't be able to do it. But don't be shy. That's probably the hardest thing to avoid.
That's great. Thanks, John. And do you feel so, like, now you're kind of used to what you need to do? Do you feel like you're quite good at meeting those recommendations in a week? Is it still quite challenging to fit it around your daily activities?
I'm kind of a cheat because I'm retired. So if I don't get up until 9 o'clock, no one's going to sack me or tell me off. So I do Pilates every morning, just for half an hour or something like that. It's really just the stretching to get my body working. But I'd started Pilates before I've had Parkinson's, and just because I'm quite tall, it's good for your back, and it turns out it's really good for your Parkinson's as well. I tried Tai Chi, didn't quite work for me, but I can see why people really enjoy it. And yoga, I've never been any good at yoga. But no, I tend to be able to fit it in reasonably well. And it's become part of my social routine. So it's not all Parkinson's exercises. I play table tennis with a U3A group, and I'm the only one with Parkinson's. I'm not the best player, but I'm not the worst.
That's great. Thank you, John. And Paul, I'm going to ask you a similar question. Were you active when you received your diagnosis? Did you get told about physical activity at the time? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, before I was diagnosed, I was quite a regular runner, and I just loved running. And I did a little bit of boxing pad work. When I got my diagnosis, it was a week before the first lockdown, so everything was closed. So the only thing was get out, and I'm lucky to live near a seafront, so I used to just run along the seafront and just keep that up because all the gyms everywhere was closed. Once it was all the whole COVID thing was over, I sort of upped my game a bit regarding the physical activity side and went back to boxing training. But it was just mainly exercises and pad work, and that was good for balance, remembering different routines, um, just being more aware of what I was able to do. I have introduced strength training, but unlike John, I don't do a lot of stretching because I'm probably as flexible as a tree trunk, and I wish I could maybe focus a little bit more on that. But yeah, I have upped it, and I believe from my experience, the exercise seems to dilute my symptoms, but it gives me a boost confidence-wise as well. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you. And do you feel like now you know the recommendations? Obviously, you said you would like to be a bit better at getting your stretching in, but do you feel in general you're able to kind of incorporate those into your life relatively easy? Do you still find lots of challenges accessing physical activity?
So I'm still in full-time employment, and I run 4 times a week. I do boxing once a week and strength and conditioning twice. The strength and conditioning is from home. The running obviously outside, but my running tomorrow morning, I'll be out before 6 a.m. That's how I fit it in. I go home, shower changed, and then on to work. You can fit it in. You just change your days now. And I've also got um, a running app. So there's a little bit of perceived pressure to meet the goals in the running app. Now, it gives you a little tick and a sort of pat if you do your run. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you. And I think we can all agree that each person's journey is going to be really, really personal. So, when it comes to you starting your own journey to an active lifestyle, or perhaps you may be in a position a bit more like Paul, a bit more like John, where you're already active and you're just looking at kind of refining that activity that you're doing to tailor it a little bit more to those recommendations. Remember to be kind to yourselves. It is a journey, so you're not looking to go from doing nothing or make these vast changes. You want to be able to commit to the changes and be consistent. And one of the big questions that came up in the questions posted before this webinar was actually, like, we had lots of questions about the best activity and exercises. Paul, you've talked about running a lot. Is running the activity you find most beneficial, or is it something else, and why? What activity is most beneficial?
For me, I would have to put hands up the running. It just gives me a chance to be just to get out there. Don't get me wrong, when I say, oh, I run 4 times a week, sometimes I might not feel like it, I might be fatigued, but I still get out there. And the reason for that is because when you do something rather than nothing, you feel 100% better by the time you're finished. So for me, running, if I'm running along and I'm feeling good, I'm happy. If I'm feeling a little bit of a flare up or something's just not right, I just slow up. I'm still moving, I'm still running, so anything's better than nothing.
Thank you. And John, what's your favorite? Which activity do you feel is most beneficial to you, and why?
I've got to say that the one that's most beneficial is the one that you're going to do. If you don't do it, then it's no use to you at all. So planning for me to go running every night, I'm not going to do it because I don't enjoy running anymore. I don't think I ever did when I did it. But I found boxing the most useful. It combines the aerobic, the balance, the power, and it's just different. It's one of those things that I have Zoom calls with old school and college friends, and it was what you've been doing this week. I've been boxing, and I can go boxing. You've got Parkinson's. You're thinking, well, yeah, but it doesn't mean I can't box. But needless to say, it's non-contact. It'd be a very bad move for me to start letting people hit me. But it's different. It's something new. It's not going to the gym. And the first time I came back from it, my wife said she hadn't seen me as animated in a couple of years. So I kind of thought, well, I must be doing a good thing for me then.
Thank you, John. And Maria, because this was such an asked question, we had lots of people looking at it different ways. We had people sort of ranging from like what's the most beneficial move they could do in the gym, to movements that are best for dystonia, to the movements that are best for people that are fit and mobile. Is there any specific scientific evidence that suggests that maybe one activity is better than another?
Well, I just love hearing John and Paul. You guys have just hit the nail on the head. First of all, that the idea of you've got to do something that you enjoy. You've got to do something you like. But if we look at the evidence, well, the evidence tells us that aerobic intensity is key. So doing something, whatever that is, whether that's running or boxing, doing something that's going to elevate your heart rate, make you hot and sweaty, and make you a little bit out of breath. That's where you're going to be. And at that point, I always remember there's Michael Yakovic and Giselle Petzinger. They're the people that really started the research around exercise over 10, almost 15 years ago. When John, you're right, when you were diagnosed, there wasn't a lot out there, but we've had such a huge explosion in research in this field certainly in the last 10 years. And Michael Yakovic, he always, I coin a phrase that he uses a lot, and that's about the fact that your exercise for Parkinson's needs to be a thinking modality that makes you sweat. And it's exactly that. It's got to be exactly as you guys have said, it's got to be challenging. You've got to be challenged. You've got to challenge your brain. And what we believe with the aerobic intensity, what happens when you work at that high level of aerobic intensity, you're priming your brain. You're releasing chemicals in the brain that create this like perfect environment for neuroplastic change to occur. So that's why we need that aerobic intensity. But then once we've got that, we've also got to do something that actually challenges our brain, that we're thinking when we're exercising. So if you have always run on a treadmill, or if you've always gone to a Zumba Gold class for years and years and years, and your instructor hasn't changed the class at all, and you're still going to that class, then okay, it's going to exercise your body, but you will not exercise your brain. You need to do something that challenges you always. And that's what we always advocate, is that just try, just as John has said, just as Paul was saying, try something that's different, try a new activity, because it's that the aerobic intensity will prime the brain, but then that new activity, that new challenge will really drive those neuroplastic changes that we're after when we're looking to control our symptoms for Parkinson's.
So Maria, if I think about aerobic activity and like high aerobic intensity, the first person that comes to my head is actually, if anybody remembers Shaun T, that I'm sure he's called Shaun T, and he used to do the workout videos that were called like Insanity, and it was always on telly shopping in the morning, and he'd be there in his big sweaty t-shirt, and he'd be doing 5,000 burpees, and everybody in his class doing. If I'm doing high intensity, have I got to do 5,000 burpees?
No, you do not. You do not. And actually, what we talk a lot about at Reach Your Peak is exercise snacking, because also the evidence, thankfully, tells us that a dose as 10 minutes of focused workout and exercise can still drive those changes in the brain. So 10 minutes can be enough. And 10 minutes is nice as well for all of those guys out there that, if you're struggling with fatigue, or if you have busy lifestyles. Paul, you've alluded to this as well. It's trying to find the time sometimes to fit like a long workout in. But what we recognize is that just as little as 10 minutes is enough to drive these changes. So yeah, you can do that. You don't have to go hit for an hour. I definitely can do that, and I wouldn't expect anybody that I work with to be able to do that either.
Thank you. So on that, if you're at home and you're thinking, do you know what? I like the sound of these different activities. Actually, I think I might be more of a class person, and you want to have a look around at maybe what's on in your area. And there's lots of opportunities you can get involved in. If you're looking for group sessions or sort of like led sessions where there might be an instructor, we do have the Parkinson's UK Activity Finder on our website. You can stick your postcode in there, and it'll bring up everything that's in your area, including the physical activities, and you can filter it to just show you the physical activity opportunities available. Alternatively, you can have a chat with your local advisor who will know about different opportunities in your area. And it's also important to note that you don't have to give up your existing activities. If you're already in a session and you really enjoy it, maybe it is that Zumba Gold class you've been doing for ages, but you would like your instructor to maybe understand a little bit more about Parkinson's. You'd like to tell them, but you'd like them to, you want that confidence that they understand what Parkinson's is so they can support you. We also have lots of free resources on our website and through me, where they can get a bit more support and a bit more understanding. The sort of like standard course is about an hour. It's online, on demand, and we can provide all the links for that in the follow-up if you do want to ask people, so you can stay in those sessions as well. Obviously, you don't have to tell your instructor. If you're feeling confident and fit and healthy, keep going to your classes. You don't have to give anything up until you don't feel confident and you don't want to do it anymore. Of course, on the other hand, there are lots of people that love social aspects, but it's not for everyone. Not everybody wants to do a group activity. Some people like to exercise a little bit more independently. So if that's you and you're thinking, I'd rather do it on my own, that's totally cool. We do have a couple of opportunities available for that as well. So if you live near an Everyone Active gym, they're a Parkinson's UK national partner, and they offer free memberships for people with Parkinson's. And they do have like an on-demand online thing where you can see different exercises and stuff on there as well. So you can have a look at that. Additionally, it's not a national partnership, but Pure Gym do have their own offer, which is that they will offer anyone with Parkinson's a free off-peak gym membership. You just email them directly. We can put all the details in the follow-up. And you can request sort of the free off-peak membership as well if you'd like to independently go. So John, I know that you're a gym goer. You've talked about a little bit. Is there anything in particular that you like about going to the gym? And is there anything you've done to help yourself feel confident using the gym and going to the gym?
Yeah, I mean, from years I've been going to the gym. I suppose I always felt fairly comfortable in the environment. I'm not one of those people. I was never the biggest, the fastest, the strongest, anything like that. So I never feel I have to keep up. If the person beside me is lifting a heavier weight than me, good on him or good on her. You know, as long as I'm challenging myself, in that case, I'm happy. I suppose one of the things I did do, because I've got something of a limp now, a bit of a gait issue, running on a treadmill could be embarrassing, not to mention painful. So I changed from running on the treadmill to walking on the treadmill. And I actually had a chat with one of the instructors there, explained what the score was. And he said, increase the incline, lower the speed, and concentrate on stepping correctly, landing on your, striking with your heel and rolling the ball with your foot. And he said, it's actually probably burning more calories than jogging along on the flat. So I thought, all right, fine. So do ask the instructors and people who work at the gym. They tend to be a little font of knowledge.
Thanks, John. And you spoke as well a little bit about how you started to incorporate those strength exercises more, because you said you weren't really too into weights originally. Is there did you just ask the instructors for support on that? Did you go to some classes? How did you start picking up that side of training?
I went to the complete expert and asked my son, who was very into doing weights and stuff like that. So he said, this is what you do with your weights. And he was, bless him, he was very good. It's kind of like, it's not a question of picking up. What do you want? He said, do you want to be big and muscular? And I said, no. But that day, that ship has sailed. So he said, right, so you just want to tone. Small weights, lots of repetitions. Don't, you know, you're not trying to show off to anybody. You're not going to build the perfect beach body, but you just want to keep everything moving. So that would be the advice. There are lots of people around, and family is often quite useful.
Thank you, John. So obviously you've talked about instructors in the gym and that sort of environment and speaking to your family as well. Now, Paul, obviously with the running, when you go outside, I assume it's just you maybe going out at the times that's convenient for you. So what do you enjoy about that, and how have you helped yourself feel confident as somebody that exercises independently quite a lot?
I, I'm probably the flip side of John. I I do a lot. Everything I do, apart from the boxing pad work, is on my own. I've never felt comfortable in a gym, but that doesn't mean you don't need to do anything. So I find when I go out running, um, I don't know what the best explanation for it. It seems to slow my mind down, and that's really important for me. I'm a bit of an overthinker, so when I'm running, at first 5, 10 minutes, I'm hating life and why am I running? And every run's the same. But then after that, you just start to relax and your mind just empties, and I absolutely love it. The strength and condition I do at home watching these videos on my running app, and it's just what I'm used to, what I'm comfortable with. The I think the one time when I was in the boxing gym, John will probably back me up in this, that he said earlier on about dumbbells. Almost had a bad accident with dumbbells because of my left arm and the tremor. So dumbbells was an absolute no-no. And John also mentioned the resistance bands, which I use. But I feel when I'm working on my own, it fits in my lifestyle. So instead of me trying to fit in going to a gym or getting caught in traffic, I can just nip home, sit out in the spare room and just take my own time and just go through each thing thoroughly, and that suits me. I'm quite happy with that.
With your knowledge as well, do you have lots of just prior knowledge of like the techniques, or do you ever find yourself maybe using like online things like YouTube and blogs to learn new techniques?
Online, my boxing coach, he's uh, so knowledgeable that he sort of ran me through a lot of stuff. And when we do some warm up, he tries to incorporate stretching before and stretching down afterwards. And then he says, right, try these ones at home now. So, but in my running app, there is videos which you follow and they're filmed at different angles, and it takes it slow at first so you can copy them at your pace. And if you look in the mirror, you can see if you're doing them right. Well, I think I'm doing them right anyway, so
No, that's fantastic. Thank you. Um, And I think obviously we've talked about like there's huge benefits if you are doing those independent activities for the flexibility to do it at those times that are convenient for you. However, for many people, it can still be really challenging, as we've said, to find those sort of 30, 45, or even 60-minute chunks to try and squeeze in those workouts, or squeeze in a class when you've got other commitments such as work and childcare and other hobbies that we enjoy as well. So Maria, obviously you touched a little bit on it before, but does everybody have to do these big chunks? Like, what's the evidence sort of compared to doing the snacking to the big chunks? Like, what would give us a good balance in the week? What's the science there?
I think the key to it all really is frequency. So that is really important. So just doing one thing once a week is not enough. That's what the evidence tells us. So just as both John and Paul have alluded to, guys, you're just such a font of knowledge, and you're practical. It's so practical. Your advice, it's brilliant. And just as they've said, it's about fitting things into your life. And so yeah, there are doing little snacks works for some people, but frequency is a really important part of the prescription, and doing whatever you're doing, making sure you're doing it more than once a week. So I think we you know, at Reach Your Peak, what we suggest to people is that 3 times a week is nice. It's a good starting point when you're going to pick up something, you know, and the first thing is to say something is better than nothing. John, you've already said that already tonight, I know. And it's so true. Something is better than nothing. Being sedentary is the worst thing you can do for your Parkinson's. So whatever that is, and even if that's like doing 10 sit-to-stands, sometimes, you know, being Paul, you're still working, you know, being at a desk all day and having to work, if you know, lots of people having to work at home or in the office, you know, it's so important to break up that sedentary time. So just, you know, 10 sit-to-stands, getting up, moving around, walking about the office, first of all, just to break that up is a start. But then when we're looking at frequency is really key, I think, when we're looking at, and that's what the evidence tells us as far as exercising is concerned. So yeah, I think that's the big take home, is more than once a week, keep it consistent, keep it frequent, and start with 3 times. I like to try and get people up to 5 times a week, but we've also spoken about how everybody's different with their Parkinson's. And I think it takes time for people to work out for themselves, because you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to work out for yourselves, and for you and for your lifestyle and for your Parkinson's symptoms. You're going to have to work out, one, when is the best time for you to exercise. We always recommend that you exercise when you're at your best, when you have got most access to movement, and when you're feeling most energized. And that time might differ from day to day as well. Of course, I am doing what I do. I'm a big advocate for online exercise and working with exercise videos because of that, because it gives that ability. But for some people, that doesn't cut it, and they need to be going out to a class, and that's fine too. So it's about working out what's best for you and what's best for your Parkinson's, and making sure that, yeah, you're working when you're at your best, when you're feeling good, when you can access that movement. So they're really key factors, I think, when we're looking at both frequency and knowing that time might fluctuate from day to day, from week to week, and definitely from person to person. So work it out for yourself, work out what your optimal dose is, because as I said right at the beginning, we have the recommendations, we have the guidelines, but they're only guidelines. And you will find out that sweet spot. It's up to you to work out that sweet spot that works for you. And you've got to bear in mind your fatigue. You know, we know apathy is a huge problem for people with Parkinson's as well. And we can talk a little bit about that and how we may have some strategies to overcome that. But yes, fatigue is a real problem. So take some time to work out what is right, what is your optimal dose for you, just for you as an individual. Yeah, and so I think that's my message there.
Thank you, Maria. Paul, do you ever use a snacky snack in the day? Do you ever have a little exercise snack?
I do. My strength and conditioning is got some good little tips in it, where when I'm in the office, I'll probably get up once in the morning, once in the afternoon for about 10-15 minutes, go on a long walk through the other end of the building. And I do some little, it's not, I wouldn't say it's stretching, but it's just little movements where you might get odd looks when people are walking past, but it's just what it is. It relieves my back, helps my posture. But yeah, I do little bits of that, but obviously still at work and in the work environment. But my strength and condition at home, it pretty much mirrors the exercise snacking sort of agenda.
Thanks, Paul. What about you, John? Do you do any snacks?
I have done. I didn't even realise they were called snacks. Mine tend to be to do with balance. If I'm standing in a queue, I will balance on one foot. So I'm the person who's there trying to decide which coffee they want at a Starbucks or whatever, standing on one foot. And it just sort of incorporates, it's just become something I do now. But outside of that, I mean, it's easier for me because I'm at home, but I will occasionally go and just pick up a resistance band and run through sort of 4 or 5 minute session of exercises just to stretch out my muscles, really. But I didn't realise they're called snacks.
I know, I think, to be fair, in the great scheme of things, there's probably a lot more snacks that when I think of snacks come to the mind. So nice Crispies and Chockies. But some of them are good for our health. And some maybe not so much. In terms of obviously the snacking as well, just thinking about people that might want to take part in this, and like John mentioned a really good tip there, where it's like you can just be out and about, and obviously Paul's talked about doing it at work. That actually it doesn't have to be something that's super planned in. It might be, you know, when the kettle's boiling, you've got a little activity while that's happening, and they're not always going to add up to that 10 minutes, but particularly like with the balance training over the day, that's going to add to your 10 minutes as well, but it's just keeping on top of it all of the time. But if we want to be doing things like that at home, Maria, is there anything that we need to think about in terms of safety, or, you know, making sure we get the maximum benefit? What do we need to be doing this safe at home, Maria?
Yeah, I think that is really important. Obviously, safety is at the forefront when when we suggest people exercise at home. So I think, first of all, to have a space, if you're going to exercise at home, to find that nice space. If you are going to use, you know, like Paul said, his app or some videos, or on YouTube, or on the Parkinson's UK channel, there is a lovely resources with lots of exercise professionals, with lots of video content there for you to follow. So if that's the case, make sure that your laptop or whatever your device you're using is in a good position. You've got space to move around. You've got suitable footwear. There are no loose rugs on the floor, or loose carpet, or you know, or the floor's not too slippy. So, and when we're talking about footwear, again, make sure you've got a sporting supportive shoe. You know, don't just exercise in your everyday work shoes, because you need that support around your ankles and your feet, especially, and that can be a real help if balance is a problem, to make sure that when you're doing your exercises, that you've got a supported shoe that you're doing your exercises in. And always, I love when we talk about balance work, I love it either in the kitchen. It is a great place in the home to work on your balance work, because you have a counter, you have a kitchen bar, you have something there that you, because in order to improve our balance, we have to challenge our balance. So being somewhere where you have got something to hold on to. If you suddenly do feel like you're going to lose your balance and you need to grab hold of something, you've got something firm to hold on to. And then whenever you're exercising, but especially at home, make sure you've got a means of contacting somebody as well. So, you know, don't be completely on your own in the house without having your phone nearby or something, just in case something happens and you need to get hold of somebody.
That's great advice. Thank you, Maria. And I think before you touched on a little bit of maybe the feelings of apathy and sort of that like emotional drive that we all need to be able to do physical activity. There's a few, I think there's only a handful of people in the world that wake up in the morning and really want to exercise, and the rest of us do it because we know we should do it. And that can be really challenging if our motivation is, I should do it. So can you talk a little bit more about that from a science perspective, in terms of like how that it might impact somebody?
Yes, certainly. So what we know about Parkinson's is that Parkinson's is a movement disorder, and it's due to a lack of dopamine. And dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and it's used in our motor circuits that take messages from our brain to our muscles and allows us to have coordinated, controlled movement. But dopamine has another role. Dopamine is released in abundance when we achieve, when we do well. And so it's an internal motivator for us. So when we exercise, although we hate the fact that we're going to exercise, when we've done it, we'll have a surge of dopamine, which makes us feel good and motivates us, reminds us what that feels like. So we'll do it again. So when you have Parkinson's, because of your lack of dopamine, you really have a problem with internal motivation. So in order to create an exercise habit and sustain an exercise habit for the long haul, we've got to look at some external motivators. We've got to look at ways to use our external environment to motivate us. And so I like to think of it as a system. And there are some key elements to that system. And I think the first key thing is to schedule. And I think both John and Paul have touched on this. I often talk to people at diagnosis, and the first thing they say to me is that I haven't got time. I haven't got time to exercise in my life. Well, you will never have time to exercise if you don't schedule it, if you don't ring fence that time, put it in your diary, write it down somewhere, tell somebody that this is your exercise time, and make sure it becomes a priority, because it is a priority. That's how important exercise is for you with Parkinson's. It's as important as your medication. So start to think of it as medication. It's a dose of medication. And so find that time and try and schedule that and write it down somewhere, because once it's written down, you're far more likely to adhere to it. So scheduling is really important. The other thing is accountability. And I know both John and Paul have also talked about this, but and John especially, you know, talking to your son, you know, letting people know, educating people on, because that's part of your role as well, as educating your family on why exercise is important. You are exercising your brain and you are structurally changing that brain. So getting them involved and saying, you know, can you help me? Can you make sure I do that? And also Paul talked about that ticking off, that yeah, again, that accountability within his app, that fact that he can tick off and say, yeah, you know, I've done that. I know what my schedule is. That's in my app and I've ticked it off. That's going to really, really help with that. The other thing is like rewarding yourself, because, you know, we don't get that internal reward. So again, that's where the ticking off helps, because by the end of the week, Paul, I bet when you've done it, you're like, yes, I've achieved, yeah, I've achieved it. I've done it this week. And you know what? I'm going to treat myself. So whether that is whatever floats your boat as far as treats concerned. Lauren, if it was you, it might be a chocky bar.
It might be. And actually, I'm just going to jump a little bit, because we have had a question which I think fits into this really well, which is, can I have a glass of wine to relax in the evening after exercise, or does it cancel out the dopamine?
If the answer is no, can you not answer that question, please?
Absolutely not. To any of my knowledge does alcohol cancel out dopamine. It has no direct effect on dopamine at all. And in fact, yes, you're right, it feeds straight into that reward. You know, if you've worked really hard and you feel you deserve a glass of wine, then please go ahead. And I do believe that there has been some evidence and research papers written on the benefits of red wine in particular. So if you do enjoy a glass of red wine, then I should, from a medical perspective, to be actually encouraging it. So yeah, no, that's great. That's a good idea. Yeah, reward yourself. You deserve it if you're working that hard.
Thank you, John. What do you do to motivate yourself?
I suppose it's one of those things. I take tablets. I take lots of tablets, and there's nothing I can do about that. It's my doctor says, take these tablets, wear this patch, do whatever, and I just do it. The only thing I can do to try and help my condition is exercise, and I feel slightly empowered by that. Yeah, it's a decision I can make. I don't have to, but I know it'll make me better. So somehow the exercise becomes its own reward at that point. And it may not be for everybody, but I prefer my journey with Parkinson's to be a long and very slow one. And if exercise can do that for me, great, I'll do the exercise.
Thank you, John. Paul, you've mentioned your app. Is there anything else that you do to help motivate yourself to get yourself out there?
I think it's the being outdoors. I like I said earlier, I run along a seafront, and I just love that. No matter what the weather is, that motivates me now, especially now with the brighter mornings. I can't get enough of it. And plus, I'm really stubborn as well, so I just like to get up and get out. I think once I wake up, I need to get up before my brain wakes up, and then just go on and just enjoy it.
Thank you. I'm going to jump to a couple more questions now because we have got a couple. Maria, I think this one possibly more to you. I think both actually. So the first one is that I've never been to the gym or exercised, and if they do any walking or gardening, their back starts to hurt. Where would you recommend their starting point be?
Right. Hello. I'd always recommend when you first start, if you can, and if it's available to you, to have access to a physiotherapist or exercise professional who can at least assess you and just make sure that everything's okay. If you don't have the luxury of being able to see anybody like that, and it's not available within your local health authority or service, then start small. So again, going back to that snacking, doing small chunks of activities. We spoke a lot about exercise and activities. There are activities around the house and in the garden that you can start with. So just sometimes, just first of all, getting a baseline. Just again, I'm a great advocate for writing things down and knowing what you're already doing. So sometimes you may be doing more than you actually think from an activity perspective. So let's just plan out your week, have your diary, write down the things and the activities you do. And it might just be walks with the dog, or going to meet a friend for a coffee, but just write those down. So you've got your baseline and you know where you're at. And then slowly start to think about those exercise snacks. Try and think about an activity that you enjoy. So if gardening is triggering your back, what is it about that movement that is triggering your back? Is there something else that you can do? If it's the bending down, can you use a stool and still be able to get out and do some stuff in the garden? So it's about modifying what you're doing and trying to work out what it is that flares up and causes that pain, and trying to work with that from that perspective, really, and slowly building up. Like we said at the beginning, Rome wasn't built in a day, and you're not going to, if you've never exercised or done anything like this in your life before, it will seem incredibly daunting, and you're not going to just suddenly get to 150 minutes and bang, that's it. So start small, bite-sized chunks, see how you react to that, and just slowly build up that. There is, as we've touched on before, certainly for people who, a whole class might not just be an option just yet. There's so much video content on the Parkinson's UK website with some really lovely workouts at every level. So we've got seated workouts as well as sort of moderate intensity workouts, right to our kind of HIIT stuff. So take one of those videos, just have a little look, have a go with that, just 10 minutes and build up from there.
Thank you, Maria. With that as well, obviously we've talked a little bit about cognitive demand and sort of like the brain challenge of activities. If I was somebody that was finding movement quite difficult to get that aerobic intensity up, could I do more cognitively challenging exercises instead that require more patterns and memory to keep would that still be helpful?
Yeah, certainly. So at Reach Your Peak, we talk about energetic demand, and energetic demand is that balance between aerobic intensity and cognitive challenge, and we look at it almost like a scale. And so, yeah, often I say to people, if they cannot aerobically load their scale because they can't access that movement, and everything is stiff, and the bradykinesia, you're just so slow that you can't elevate that aerobic intensity. If you've got to that's where you're at, then cognitively load, yes, look at complexity of movement. You can do, there are some, as I said, there's some, everybody thinks, often have said to me, seated exercise, it's too easy. No, I know, because I had to do the seated exercise in our Get Started program, and it nearly killed me. You can work really hard in seated, but load on that complexity. And I think we haven't mentioned things like dance. So for some people, dancing is a great activity stroke exercise, because I think it is an exercise as well. And we've got that cognitive challenge, we've got that pattern of movement, we've got that social interaction as well. So think outside the box, think what you enjoy, and really get out there and just try something. And I think we go back to what John said right at the beginning, is having the confidence to do that. And I think what people tell me is that they are always, a lot of people suffer from anxiety and that fear of going out and trying something new. But when they do, it's so rewarding, and people are so open and helpful. So, please try. I know it's easier said than done, but just try. Yeah, you will be surprised at how welcoming people are, and encouraging too. So yeah.
Thank you, Maria. I was just thinking back to when we had our all-colleague day at Parkinson's UK, and we did a seated exercise session, a mini session. It would have been a snack. It was only 10 minutes. And as part of that activity, there was like a clapping pattern where you were like patting your knees and then clapping in the air. And you would not believe how many people got that wrong, at least once, myself included. I'm not calling everybody else that was there, because it was so cognitively challenging to try and remember what you were doing with your hands and then what you were doing with your legs. So it really does have that cognitive challenge. And it's not just dancing that has that. We've touched on things like boxing. Again, you might have sort of like, I'm not a boxing instructor, but I'm going to go with sort of like jabbing patterns, for example. And we might be using both arms side to side. Sports like table tennis and tennis, you can still play those seated. Even playing with a balloon in your house, you can play little ball games with a balloon. Balloons are great because they don't break all of your ornaments. not saying from experience.
Lauren, last time I saw you, you had a balloon in your hands in Stoke. So
I did, yeah. You can do, I believe you can do lots with a balloon in your house. And again, you can do all these different activities, pressing it on the wall, pushing it up in the air. Just be careful if you're doing anything upwards. Obviously, you've got to look upwards. So just think about your balance when you're doing that. But obviously, all those things are challenges. And we've got a specific question about a sport, which is rowing. And I think it comes back to that original point that, John's made, Paul's made, Maria, you've made, that it's about the activity that you're going to stick to. Now, rowing in general, I would say, is quite a challenging activity anyway. It's very aerobic. You need lots of strength to move that water. And there's a huge amount of timing involved with rowing. And then depending on the boat, you're going to have a lot more balance in certain types of boats and things. So I think, but it comes back to that every activity is good. So if you're thinking at home now, you're watching and you're thinking, well, I do skiing, I do snowboarding, I do sailing, I do all of these different activities. Sailing, yes, maybe not as aerobic at times. Obviously, when the wind gets you, it's a little bit more. But you do have all the cognitive challenges of working out how you're going to turn and tack and jibe, and you've got to get your spinnaker up, and then you get spinnaker back in. So if you're at home thinking about all those different ropes and things that you got to do, that's cognitively challenging. So never think that your activity isn't good enough. One other question we've got time for is somebody questioning if they do activities such as balance activities wrong, could they make their posture worse and cause more problems? Maria. I should have directed that to you.
I'm guessing that's for me, but guys, please chip in as well, because you all have more experience, I'm sure, as well on balance side of things. So the question was, could they make, if they do things and
if you do it wrong, can it be made worse?
Can their balance be made worse?
Their posture. They were questioning.
Can their posture be made worse? I wouldn't say that balance exercises per se directly affects your posture. If your posture is poor, you need to be looking at stretch and mobility work to work on that posture to try and improve your overall posture. And I think what we see in Parkinson's, a lot of people are quite kyphotic and sort of stuck in sort of quite rigid in the trunk. And that will in turn affect their balance. But I would say if you're working on your balance, no, it's not going to, there's no direct effect on your posture. Balance, it's important that we work on our balance, and so you may have got to that stage where you're quite kyphotic and quite stuck, but that doesn't mean to say you shouldn't be working on your balance, and it doesn't mean to say if you're struggling with your balance exercise that it's going to make you more kyphotic. But yeah, I think it's hard answering questions when you haven't got more context to it. I think it's hard to be general. It sounds, yeah, but generally, just as does it make it worse? No, doing balance exercises won't necessarily make your posture worse. John, Paul, have you got anything to add?
I think if you go to do any sort of exercise, if you can get the technique right, and that might be with a professional, or in John's case, maybe a family member. I think if you get taught the technique properly, it eliminates any possible injuries or strains, where then if you were to get that, you would be overcompensating. So I think when you are going to look at any exercise, just make sure you get the technique right first, and then like myself, that's when I go off into it myself. But I'm always, if I'm doing anything new, I always make sure I get shown the technique properly.
Yeah, and one thing I definitely agree with Maria, always go and see a medical professional before you start doing anything. I happen to have spinal stenosis as well as Parkinson's. They've got nothing to do with each other, but I would have a bad back, and it doesn't just mean, oh, my bad back is due to my Parkinson's. My bad back could be due to something completely different, which in this case it is. So don't just put everything down to Parkinson's. If you've got a bad back, go and see a doctor and see if they can do anything about it.
Thank you. So it has just gone, it's nearly 5 past. I've been naughty. I've stole some extra minutes. But thank you everyone for sticking around for the extra 5 minutes and not running off. We're going to wrap up there. Just to finish off, I'm going to ask each panelist if they could give one piece of advice. It might be to your past self, it might be to somebody that's starting out, or somebody that's already active and wants to keep going and refining. What would your top piece of advice be? And then we will end the session and everyone can go and have the tea, have a bicky. Maybe it's have a red wine because you've done your training today. Who knows? John, I'll start with you.
Okay, I'll cheat and tell you 3 things. Do whatever exercise you can, whatever it is. Do it as well as you can. I've got to admit, half-assed exercises, if you're going to do amplitude, don't do amplitude. And if you can, do it with friends, because you're far more likely to keep it up.
Thank you, John. And Paul?
I would mirror John in saying, do what you feel comfortable with. But I would also say anything that you choose to do just now is like a little gift to your future self. So if what you can do physically just now, I believe, helps you in the long run, mentally and physically. Consistency. Get out there. I'll go on mute now.
Thanks, Paul and Maria.
How do I follow that? I'm just going to follow with just do it, as the motto says, as the tick. Yeah, just, whatever you can do, just do it, and get out there and make it, and empower yourself, and make a difference.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm sure you'll give at home a silent round of applause for all our panelists. Thank you guys for giving up your time tonight and coming on to share your stories and all of your information and everything that you've provided tonight. It's been really helpful, and I'm sure everybody at home feels the same as well. So thank you very much, and we will end the webinar there. Thank you, everyone. Bye.